Good morning. Senate Judiciary, Thursday, January 25th, 2024. And we're taking up S209, which is an act relating to unserialized firearms and unserialized firearm claims and receivers and juvenile offenses in the criminal division, which Eric, I believe, has a draft that's changed to that particular juvenile offenses section. And next week we'll be discussing where to deal with the, for lack of a better term, people who are not leaseholders who reside in an apartment and are dealing drugs, how to deal with that group. That's John Gray, so hopefully, from Ledge Council, so hopefully we'll get a place for that. So without, you want to hand out the handout or put it on the screen? Or?
Oh, it's pretty short. I think Ben already handed it out. So you should have it shaded with some shading on it as to where the changes are between, oh, sorry, I should have introduced myself. Eric Fitzpatrick with the Office of Legislative Counsel, here to speak with the committee about a proposed amendment to a portion of S209, as Senator Sears said. S209 deals with both unserialized firearms and Big 12 offenses. And this amendment, though, is not concerning the firearms portion of the bill, only deals with the Big 12 offenses portion of the bill.
Ben, what did you, I can't find it.
You looking for the amendment?
Yeah. Oh, this is the amendment?
Yeah, this is that, and it's also got that introduced.
Page 1 of 3, okay. Thank you. Now I'm seeing it.
Sure. And I think it's also online, so if anybody wants to follow along, they can pull it up on their screens. But as I was saying, the amendment only deals with the Big 12 portion of the bill, which is Section 3, and the highlighted portions of the language that you see in front of you indicate where the proposed changes are between the bill as introduced and the bill that you're looking at now. So you may remember when I did the walkthrough of the bill as it was introduced, what the Big 12 section did was it proposed to add 4 offenses to the current list of Big 12 offenses. Remember, Big 12 offenses are offenses that, when committed by a person 18 years of age or younger, they start in the criminal division rather than the family division. You know, the list of offenses that start in the criminal division right now is only limited to those 12. If it's some other offense, starts in the family division if it's committed by someone 18 or under. So the proposal is add 4 to that Big 12 list. And actually those 4, which are human trafficking, drug trafficking, aggravated stalking, and carrying a firearm while committing a felony. Those 4 were in Act 23 as it passed this committee and passed the Senate last year. So you passed this legislation already last year. Did not make it into Act 23 as it was signed by the governor, but it was passed by this committee and the Senate. So that's, I'm sure not only did you see the language when it was introduced, when I walked you through it a couple weeks ago, you saw it quite a bit last year as well. But I just indicated what the 4 offenses were in the bill as introduced, and now you can see where some of the proposed changes are in the amendment to the addition of these offenses to the Big 12 and to one of the existing Big 12 offenses, which is where I'll start, page 2, line 4, lines 4 through 6. This actually isn't dealing with one of the proposed additions, it's dealing with the existing law, which is number 12 of the Big 12, is, as currently written, burglary into an occupied dwelling, as defined in, and then it cross-references the burglary statute. And the issue there that I think the committee was discussing and that Senator Sears was trying to address here is that because of the way that the occupied dwelling language is defined in Title 13, it's interpreted to include situations where no one is actually living in the place at the time of the burglary. So it could be, for example, some seasonal deer camp that no one's living in at that time, no one's there. But if someone is typically there, then the burglary statute definition is interpreted to cover that. So the idea of the proposed change in the language is, keep burglary as one of the big 12, but you narrow it somewhat. So you see that it would be burglary into not an occupied dwelling as defined in that statute, but rather burglary into a currently occupied dwelling in violation of that statute. So it would have to be a situation where somebody actually is occupying that dwelling at the time. So
Important to note that breaking into an occupied dwelling remains a crime under Vermont law. It just wouldn't be part of the Big 12 as we're looking at where juveniles could be charged in adult court. I just want to make that clear. We're not changing that part of the law.
no, that's exactly right, Senator.
That makes it okay. It's not okay to break into any
Right.
dwelling.
Yeah, it doesn't change the underlying offense at all. It only changes which
Which
young people would be treated as Big 12 offenders.
would
That's it.
automatically be able
Right.
to go to adult court.
So that's the first proposed change. The second, sorry.
I got a question on that, Eric. In looking under the definition of 12:1, C, I guess I'm a little bit, occupied dwelling means a building used as a residence either full-time or part-time, regardless of whether someone is actually present in the building. So where are we differentiating between a camp or a house? If a house is used part-time or a camp is used part-time, is that an occupied dwelling?
Yeah, but someone would have to have, because of the way it's defined here, it would have to be currently occupied. So, see, the definition that you were just reading, the latter part of that clause said regardless of whether I don't have it in front of me, but I think you said something like regardless of whether the dwelling is occupied at that time, something like that.
Full-time part, regardless of whether someone is actually present in the building at the time.
That's right. This changes that for the purposes of the Big 12. This says has to be currently occupied. So someone
But they don't have to be there. I'm living in a camp, I go to the store, I'm still occupying that dwelling, I had to go to the store to get some milk.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Right, it's occupied, but you're not
Still
gone
occupied.
you're not there that weekend. Like you said, you didn't go there at all. I mean, contrasting it with that situation. It's a situation, yes, where,
Just don't want to leave it open to too much interpretation.
right, I hear you. No, but I think you're right, that if you were there that weekend, but you had to run down to the store, it's occupied that weekend. That's the way I would read it.
That's the way we read it, but still a lot of interpretation.
Yes, yeah.
Coffee pot's still warm.
Right.
Maybe you left the lights on.
Always.
Yeah, so that's the proposed change to number 12 of the Big 12. The proposed addition of number 13, remember, as the language was as introduced, and is the same language that's in the statute 13 VSA 4005, is carrying a firearm while committing a felony. So you don't have to actually have used the firearm in the commission of a felony at all. It could be, in the backseat of your car while you were, committed a felony DUI with death resultant, something like that, in which the firearm had nothing to do with it at all. The idea here is that you're using the firearm while committing the felony, so that it's, again, narrowing the situation to where the offender is using the firearm for purposes of the felony itself, not just they happen to have it in their possession while the firearm is being committed.
Just
While
to,
the offense is being committed, sorry.
Eric, just to make it more clear for what I think the intent is for 13 there, should it be using a firearm while committing a violent felony? Would that add more clarity?
Well, I don't think it's so much a clarity issue as a policy call. It's absolutely a policy question that you could do, for sure. You could, because I think violent felony is defined in other places. If you wanted to limit it to violent felonies, you could certainly do that, for sure.
Just a thought.
Well, the individual who puts a firearm on the coffee table and orders that occupant to do certain things has, in my mind, then committed a felony, depending upon what he's ordering that individual to do. But is using a firearm while committing that felony, it isn't exactly, shooting it, but he's threatening to use it, sort of like kidnapping. And that, for lack of a better term, that woman who is leasing the apartment is then ordered to have sex with all of his guys. And the firearm is the threat on the coffee table. That's what I have in mind.
Gotcha.
So it's not necessarily,
Right, gotcha.
I suppose, kidnapping, but I guess it could be. So, and then we've changed the human trafficking to make sure that we don't bring in the victim.
Yes, exactly. That's the next proposed change is that, again, to narrow the definition of human trafficking, again, similar to what you were mentioning, Senator Sears, for burglary, only for purposes of the Big 12. This doesn't change the underlying substantive crime. It just changes, hopefully, the idea being to narrow the universe